the least favorite parts for most NHL players as far as contracts are concerned is the requirement and expectations to be in constant communication with the media. And while some have been good at giving cliche answers we've all heard 100 times, or flying under the radar, others over the years haven't been so lucky, as a select few have seemingly been targets for various reasons for different reporters. In this video, I'm going to go over 4 players that have been roasted by the media. Anyone that's familiar with the Toronto media knows that reporters in the region don't hold back in throwing players under the bus when the opportunity presents itself. And for Mitch Marner, who had already been criticized prior to for prolonging his contract signing at the beginning of the season, was yet again the subject of scrutiny this summer, as the Toronto Maple Leafs were yet again eliminated in dramatic fashion by underdog the Columbus Blue Jackets. One player that fell seemingly under fire was none other than number 16 himself. While some were demanding Marner be traded, others became heavily critical of Kyle Dubas and his logic in paying a player 7 figures who fails to score a single goal in a critical 5-game series. The criticism was so high-key that it eventually found its way straight to Dubas, who was asked point-blank on what kind of player he wanted Marner to be next season. "I don't get the criticism of Mitch Marner one bit," Dubas retorted, while speaking with a local Toronto media group. "I really struggle with it. He's a guy that plays his off every night." And the most recent player who has unfortunately gotten on the media's bad side is Vezina finalist Tuukka Rask, as Rask, who seemed disinterested from the get-go while in the bubble, made headlines around the league as the netminder decided to leave his team and travel back to Finland. Before the true motive to remove himself from the festivities came to light, however, Rask found himself taking heat from multiple media sources, including longtime NBC analyst Mike Milbury, who chastised the goaltender on live TV while saying nobody simply opted to leave the bubble just because they didn't want to be here, and they needed to be with their family, he says. "I wouldn't have done it. The rest of the league's players haven't done it." Even after the true reason Rask decided to leave the bubble was revealed, being that his young daughter was critically ill, it still didn't silence the criticism, as Boston's own Matt Porter voiced his opinion as well, claiming that Bruins GM Don Sweeney said Rask's family is safe and healthy, and quote, "no specific incident is causing him to go home," end quote. One of the most interesting and original characters to have ever graced the NHL with his presence is Russian netminder Ilya Brisgolov. Brought in initially as a free agent, Briz was the answer that Philadelphia thought they were looking for in net, as the search for the next Hextall had been a daunting task that plagued the franchise for several years. And former GM Paul Holmgren apparently believed that Brisgolov was the one that could potentially get the team over the hump for the first time since the 70s. After the 31-year-old was given a 9-year, $51 million deal, much expectation was on the netminder's shoulders, more than ever to perform. And following his debut season for Philly, the goaltender wasn't able to deliver as the Flyers would have hoped, as he finished with a .909 save percentage and a 2.48 goals against average. This, of course, was the catalyst for criticism amongst the media, and even former teammates, as reporters confronted Brisgolov following a win for Philly while blitzing him with the news that his former teammates from the desert were critical of his personality and inability to stop pucks. And his numbers during his final season, before the contract buyout, didn't silence the critics either, as the former Tendy finished with a .900 save percentage and a 2.79 goals against average. From Mike Milbury to several Philadelphia reporters, the criticism that the netminder fell victim to in the city of brotherly love was unprecedented.
Briz, this last couple of days been tough on you in that people have been accusing you of things.
Like what?
Sleeping in a meeting.
How do you feel? I mean, do you think you need a little bit of a breather here right before we get to the playoffs?
And yet another unique player that was often misunderstood was 2-time Stanley Cup champ Phil Kessel. But prior to the forward earning his Stanley Cup rings, Kessel fell victim to immense criticism as a Maple Leaf in Toronto, as Kessel and his new team weren't exactly known as Cup contenders, as they failed to make a postseason appearance for the first 3 seasons of number 81's tenure in Toronto. Therefore, as the Leafs struggled immensely during the 2014-15 season, one of the biggest targets in the room was Phil the Thrill, as the media went from asking Kessel point blank after Randy Carlyle's firing if he was the one to blame, to being called out for lack of conditioning. The forward's relationship with reporters soured quickly. Shortly before the season ended in 2015, though, Kessel demonstrated that he had had enough by firing back at reporters regarding their treatment of Leafs captain at the time, Dion Phaneuf, while calling their tactics and words embarrassing. I think a lot of people should be ashamed of themselves, he says. I'm embarrassed for them. Regardless, after being the whipping boy in Toronto, Kessel finally found redemption in Pittsburgh. At least, one of these stories has a happy ending, right?